What is up, everybody? Solomon here. Super excited to be with Genfinity, interviewing a multitude of builders across Web3. This is going to be an awesome interview. We're going to be diving deep into the weeds with the transactional Internet of Things. Super excited to have SealCoin with us today. We're going to be talking about the power of Hedera and what's kind of happening out there across the globe, and really the democratization of data as well. Jonathan, as we kick off into this, I'd love if you could give us just an intro and overview on SealCoin, and then maybe a broad, give us a broad taste of how it enables devices to transact with each other in real time.
Cool. Thank you, Solomon, for having me and us, SealCoin, to present what we're doing. We're super excited about building specifically on Hedera infrastructure, and basically SealCoin is part of a cybersecurity group. It's very important that we understand the components we have cooked inside SealCoin, because we're going to be speaking about IoT, so devices. We're going to be talking about identities of individuals, companies, entities, but also of the object. It's very important that today our objects, whether they are physical or virtual, but both, have an identity. Think about an AI agent. Is it mine? Is it yours? Who are we speaking about? What are we speaking about? And then we have, of course, how can we bring these cybersecurity tools that are usually in siloed, in very close and protected environment, bridge to DLT blockchain, and how we can close the trust gap between those physical infrastructure from cybersecurity and digital infrastructure provided by DLT. So this is a bit the story behind SealCoin. Just a quick overview on my background. Coming from investment banking, moved toward fintech designing platform, and 9 years ago moved to blockchain, built a few solutions there, and now with SealCoin. Super pumped about the asset I've been given to play with, to make sure that we can provide such ecosystem. And building with Hedera also is a major enabler, because we're talking about IoT. You mentioned transactional IoT. What it means that our devices are going to be autonomous. It means that they are secured in a way, but also we're talking about billions of devices, not millions of devices. We're not trying to onboard the next millions of users or billions. We're talking about multi-billion devices that will be onboarded online, on chain, and this is what we're trying to achieve now.
Yeah, I think it's interesting being in this space, in the blockchain and DLT space, where we do have like so much innovation, but a lot of it is, innovation for the sake of innovation, like trying to get people to care about blockchain, and even like real world businesses trying to get them to care just about the technology. And I think it's interesting because, like, at the end of the day, it's great to have that kind of romanticized view of everything, but real world businesses like care about, something that's either going to save them money or make them money, and doing that through streamlining processes, whatever it may be. So I found it really interesting going through some of the real world applications that you guys had listed on the site, and I would love if you could maybe tackle some of the problems that exist out there traditionally, and where you do see that value add with distributed ledger, and what you guys are trying to work on through SealCoin. Maybe we start, you have a full list here, so whichever one you might want to tackle, I think would be awesome to educate everybody.
Let's start first with conceptually what we're trying to achieve and where we're coming from. We're coming from cybersecurity. Basically, we create microchips, okay? Secure microchips that are embedded into our devices. It can be your phone, it can be your car, it can be whatever devices. Usually you will find what we call a secure element, a microchip that will secure your device, making sure that no one can hack into the device physically. What our group is specialized in is, because we have a small factory of these devices that are super advanced, we have the opportunity to do two things: not only to create the device, but also to inject the identity of the device at the heart of the device. And that, by the way, using exactly the same technology as DLT. We're talking about cryptographic keys, okay? And the realization of the concept of SealCoin was simply to understand that if the physical world work exactly like that, with having a pair of keys using cryptographic algorithm, and DLT and cryptocurrencies are working the same, there is a way to bridge those two main components. And this is exactly where we started from. Why are we doing that? And we'll come to the use cases right after, because what we're solving now is a trust gap between those siloed ecosystem. My device is secure, and DLT is providing, it's providing digital integrity. We most of the time are praising ourselves, saying that DLT is data integrity. Well, no, sir. It depends. If easy, I mean, we've heard it many times. Bullshit in, bullshit out. So how can we solve this trust gap of DLT providing us with a robust ecosystem, digital ecosystem, able to provide digital integrity, but what's coming in? And what we're solving with all of that, or what we're doing, because then we will talk about the real use cases and what we're solving, but what we are doing is that we're making sure that any data that will hit the blockchain will be produced by the device, and we're going to be able to identify which device, and of course its owner, so you and me, own the device. And that changes everything, because then not only you have digital integrity, but you can source this truth of data from the beginning, from the device, which is secure. And in doing that, so this is what we do. In doing that, we're solving many other things. And simple example that we can take, for example, is energy trading. Energy is a service that we consume most of the time. And today, you and I, we have become what they call prosumers. We used to be consumers, okay? We consume a service. Now we're prosumers, because if you put a solar panel on your roof, you become also a producer. So they call that a prosumer, saying that you can consume and produce energy. But you use an infrastructure where you are allowed to consume the energy that you're producing, but if you produce more than what you can consume, you sell it back to the grid. And we even saw that at some point, not only it's a discount, but sometimes you have to pay to push back this energy to the grid. At a time where the entire world is fighting to get sustainability and making sure that we can gain efficiency, at least from an energy point of view. So how the government can actually require everyone to become sustainable and still offer infrastructures that are outdated. So what we're doing is that we're saying that regardless of who's your infrastructure provider, or who's your energy provider, and regardless of who's the electric vehicle car maker, okay, if you have a SealCoin agent inside your solar panel, and your neighbors has a SealCoin agent inside his car, when he needs energy, and you're willing to sell this extra energy, they can not only transact together, so they can communicate together. That's given in the IoT landscape. You can communicate with one another, but you're going to be able to make sure that you can securely exchange the information and settle the price on chain, because each one of you has claimed the ownership of your own devices, and we've created a whole platform for that. So we can make sure that you are who you claiming to be, having your identity. It can be a decentralized identity, or it can be a DID, it can be an official ID. We can claim the ownership of the device, and once you have the ownership of the device, you connect your wallet to your device. Remember, we're injecting the identity inside the device. We can also inject the wallet. It's the same technology. And with that, the car can actually purchase the energy straight from the solar panel and settle everything on chain. At no point in time you need to intervene. At no point in time you need to do anything to secure the combination. Of course, we can put layers if you want to prove a transaction, or you can automate all of that. And these are the real use cases that we are solving now.
I think that
so when we speak, as you're pointing out, when we speak about device-to-device transaction, an electric vehicle in that case is a device. Your solar panel is another device, and they're going to transact. Same goes for the energy trading.
I think wow, there's so many different routes that I could take this. I think where my head goes, which is what's really interesting, is in this space, a lot of the times we talk about like kind of the low hanging fruit of what's out there. And it's like, it seems like so remedial. Like you guys are kind of tackling it at like this, like the true infrastructure, layer to an extent. I'm curious your thoughts of where this kind of goes in the future, because you talk basically what we're talking about is like the democratization of data and kind of almost like this open data marketplace where us as producers of energy as an example, and my neighbor down the street as a producer of energy as an example, that is maybe an overabundance, instead of that float going back up into the powers that be and me never seeing that as a producer, it really opens things up and kind of creates this society where we kind of get rewarded for like things that we're normally doing in our everyday lives, which I do think is the overlap of like mass adoption in this space. Is how do you get the different layers of technology to mix and make sense and impact people's daily lives without them even necessarily knowing or having to care what's kind of going on. So like I love that. I think it's pretty crazy what you guys are accomplishing.
If I can add there, I think you're right. It's not because we can do it that is easy to do and that we're going to be able to achieve it. And in terms of low-hanging fruit, I've just described an easy to understand use case where we exchange services, but it relies on the infrastructure provider to play a game to bring the energy from one point to another. It's happening already in communities, but we still need to involve them in a way in the infrastructure. And our plan is not to tell them that, look, we don't need you anymore. We still need you, and we're going to pay you to bring the energy from A to B. But we pay you for that, for using the infrastructure, not for the service level agreement. Okay, and that's a major difference. And you're right also in saying that that will take time because we have so many players to convince, to play with, to do many things. I think we need to target these mid to long term goals with low hanging fruit. The low hanging fruit is the data we produce. If we can make sure that these service providers can have a read of our energy consumption, not at the smart meter level. Okay, today they stop at your door. If they can have a read at your device level in terms of energy creation and consumption, we're going to gain everyone a lot of efficiency in managing this energy, and you can be rewarded for that. That's the first step. The second step is not to trade your energy, is maybe to trade the storage of this energy, because let's say the infrastructure provider won't let you to trade directly peer-to-peer. We're a very fan of peer-to-peer. They like to have B2C, okay? B to you. The business they control. So what we can achieve easily or at a faster pace is to convince the network to agree that I won't sell my energy to my neighbor, but I'm buying his storage capabilities because I consume all my energy. I still have 20% of energy that I'm going to lose. And instead of pushing it back to the grid, I'm storing it at my neighbor's car that I'm purchasing. He's earning money for doing not much, and then I can consume it and use it later on. That's an easy step. And this is exactly the type of interaction that we want to put in place, even though our final target is, of course, the smart meters that can actually hold the SealCoin agent and start trading peer-to-peer. It will take time, but data will ease the way there, and we can prove that this data is secure because it has been produced by a secure device, and so on and so forth. This is how we are building things.
I think it's also really interesting. Like I've done a lot of these kind of interviews where, I've kind of learned that like even at the enterprise level, at institutional level, at whatever it may be, like all these systems for data are like really siloed, like very much so siloed. Like I actually so you mentioned cybersecurity, and I did a space with a guy. I forget who it was, maybe like a year ago, and he was mentioning like whenever there's a security breach at a traditional firm, you have the firm that knows that there's a problem. and they're custodians of their own data. You have a solutions provider out there that knows the solution. You have another firm out there in the wild that may be experiencing the same problem but has no idea how to solve it. Like, it's so crazy. Like, I've even literally heard that a lot of these enterprises like have like different segments of their business can't even see or access or understand the data that's going on in another internal
Chinese
segment
wall.
of their business. It's crazy.
It's Chinese walls for making sure that you have the right to have this data, and sometimes for the lack of the infrastructure being able to provide you with this data. So those are big issues. But let's have another simple example. You're at your everyone is speaking about smart homes. The big issue with the smart homes is that some of my devices are produced by several manufacturers, let's say Samsung, Apple, Amazon, Google. Okay, there's no way these brands will cooperate to read my data. I'll have to make sure that my data, I can control my data with the Google infrastructure and systems, then my Apple data with them, and I will fight for interoperability. This is the type of silo where we want to work with these manufacturers in a format of data oracle, where the owner of the data of the device, okay, will be able to communicate securely the data to whomever and to whatever is required. If it's with another device, they will consume because I gave access. I gave my consent to receive the data. Whether the data is readable or not, that's another topic, because there's a lot about data anonymity or not, but it depends. Of course, zero knowledge proof enables all of that to happen. We have that in real life. It just doesn't happen in the digital world. If I go to the kiosk to buy a packet of gums, no one will ask me my names or where the money is coming from. We have anonymity in the physical world. If I want to buy a bottle of wine, maybe I need to show my ID to make sure that I am allowed to. We're lacking all of that in the digital space because I need to provide my identity with my home address, my name, my specific date of birth. What we can achieve there is it's greater. We have the technology for that. We're still lacking a lot of it to happen. So,
Sure.
but we're bringing the whole ecosystem. Again, it's not only about us building on around TIoT, transactional IoT. It's about Hedera building the infrastructure of transactional of transaction and digital integrity. It's about zero knowledge proof. It's about all of this ecosystem to be able to come together in a simple way.
Yeah, I think for those listening, and I know we're throwing around some tech stuff, but like my base level understanding of, or at least the way I try to understand zero knowledge proofs, and that's like still super early as far as like where all the stuff's going to actually get integrated, is like right now, imagine when you go to a new doctor and you have to give like your entire medical history, you have to give your social security number, you have to give a drop of blood, all this stuff just to go, go in for a cold or for the flu or something. And, zero knowledge proofs, essentially, it's like the minimum level of information needed to be able to participate in something. So like, and whether that threshold is maybe an age, whether that threshold is a jurisdiction, maybe that threshold is a SealCoin, chip that's embedded into a satellite, and that's the identity. Like, all this stuff converges together. It's going to be really interesting to kind of watch how it shakes out. I would love if you could go down this direction of kind of bullshit in, bullshit out, though, because I think it's super relevant right now, especially with like the adventation of like the AI stuff and the chat GPT moment. People use AI and they're like, oh, it's so cool that it spits this out. But it's like, okay, but what's going into that model to make it spit something out? So how important is, even before distributed ledger technology, having data provenance and having identity nailed out and all the other things before that data even gets, time stamped on a ledger?
Yes, and that's a big question, but it all comes down to identity and validating a data point. Was this data point validated or not? And today, 100% of our data environment is not validated. Most of the time, we're talking about statistical data, probabilistic data, and we refer to you as something online because you made some action, and based on the probability, yours is something, and the whole internet works like that. That comes with a lot of issues. You mentioned AI. Where is the data coming from, and also to whom does it belong to? That's another big issue. One word before I explain what we can, how we can solve things. The zero knowledge proof is complex. We'll solve that. But again, it's all about finding incremental steps that are easy to use for the service providers and for the users. The zero knowledge proof come with a cost of speed most of the time. And if you want to update an ad online in live for your user journey not to be interrupted, it's difficult. But what if, and this is what we're achieving with SealCoin using identity providers. We have one in the group, luckily, which is called WiseID. What if we give you a badge? With your badge, you have your not your date of birth, but a badge proving that you're an adult. That changes the whole thing, and we can find shortcuts to ease your understanding of what we're doing and the understanding of the service provider to give you this service. So it's all about finding those incremental steps. When it comes to AI and source of data, that brings a lot of issues, a lot of topics, a lot of that has a lot of repercussion, not knowing where this data is coming from. Because was the output I got from this AI using any bias, using any angle data, which is something I cannot see, I cannot perceive, but is still cooked into the solution. And to be able to solve that, we need to make sure that we can prove where this data is coming from outside of the monetization aspect. There is a big impact on monetization, but outside of that, we need to understand the independence of this data choice. And then AI will have a lot of impact in terms of agentivity. Most probably tomorrow, I'll have AI agent representing me online to do stuff that I don't want to do. Most probably, it will take decisions that I've instructed him to do or it to do. Okay. How can you prove that when it knocks at the door of the API of the service provider, it's really mine? Again, it's all about having an AI that can hold an identity and you can treat it as a device. Let's make sure that this is mine, it belongs to me, and it will act for me. So on your AI question, you have two sides, the one from the service provider, the ChatGPT, the Gemini, the Claude, and all those AI that needs to make sure that they can prove where the data is coming from, at least from a framework environment. I need to understand what has been used to come down to this outcome. And then from a pure usage point of view, we're going to have a lot of AI agents flying around. To whom do they belong to?
Yeah. I want to kind of ask, to broaden it out a little bit, like, transactional Internet of Things. I think that we've seen a lot of prevailing use cases that seem like they're going to have not only like a massive impact, but literally kind of change like the fabric of society, like how things just kind of work. I think the DPIN is one of those, and I think that physical devices, these kind of infrastructure networks, like even to the point of like a cell phone, like I feel like when we get into like mass adoption of like any technology, it's got to integrate, like I kind of mentioned before, with our everyday lives. And like, what do we do more, or what do most people do more? Even a lot of the unbanked population in the world has a cell phone. So like, what's your kind of viewpoint of where we're at here? Like, let's say a decade out, with how some of these DPIN networks really are kind of affecting our everyday lives.
To this point, whether it's a physical object, your phone, or a digital object, your AI agent, you will need the same level of technology. You will need those cybersecurity tools that we're using, the PKI, the public key infrastructure, a public and a private key, post-quantum algorithm soon, okay, to make sure that you can recognize who's who. It's all about who's who. The unbanked people are recognized by the phone, okay? But at any point, it will come down to either a device or, as we speak about the real world asset, those are our digital assets, okay? And how can I claim the ownership to this asset, physical or digital, to me? And this is what we're solving. And it's not about how I can prove this is my object. It's about cooking an infrastructure and an environment where I don't even have to prove it, because it is designed in such a way that I cannot fake the system. I cannot skew the system. I cannot breach the system. And this is what we're building with Web3. It's not about me proving. It's about you can verify.
Yeah.
So once you have that, what we can do one another is kind of limited to what we can manage as individuals. As soon as you solve a way that you can delegate all of your activities, as we start to do, to external assets, physical or digital, the transactional IoT world is there already. And unless it is a secure environment, it won't happen. And this is exactly what we're bringing. And we're not selling security or cybersecurity. It's not something to sell. We're selling specific use cases that you can use that can improve your day-to-day activities and life. But the premises, the starting point is cybersecurity is given and we can verify everything.
I want to move because you mentioned Web3, and if you could just touch base on like, the overlap of, blockchain and a distributed ledger, and maybe even in particular, like what a network like Hedera kind of represents as all of these. At the end of the day, we're talking about really like data as an RWA for a lot of this stuff. I know you and I were kind of talking beforehand, like when we talk about tokenization of RWAs, it's always this low hanging fruit, traditional financial products, all this stuff. But we're moving towards a future where data is certainly kind of represented on chain or on Hashgraph or whatever it may be. What does a network like Hedera offer? I mean, from like an architecture standpoint, whether it be microservices or from just a scalability standpoint, from a future proofing standpoint, wherever you want to take it.
I think it's very important to understand the scalability issues that we're facing as soon as we're talking about devices. We're talking about billions of devices being onboarded, 10 billion, 20, 100 billions of devices. And if you add to these physical devices, our agents, a digital asset that can represent us, we're talking about trillions of objects that will have to represent us. And Hedera has this very high throughput combined with very low cost of transaction that enables us to start thinking about those macro payment capabilities. And without the macro payment capabilities, you're back to a bank transfer in terms of days, in terms of cost. So it doesn't make sense. So to make these type of transaction network happen, you need a robust infrastructure. So that's because of this throughput and cost of transaction, it enables new use cases and new business cases. But of course, then you have the whole DLT and how it is organized differently than a blockchain. And we don't need to enter into detail there, but that will have a robust environment for digital integrity, which is a hard component to everything that we're trying to achieve here.
I want to get into that. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
No, please go ahead.
So I think one of the more notable things, which obviously captures people's eyes, is anything SpaceX tie-ins or related, which it was really cool to see, some of the payloads launching with SealCoin technology, and I know that there's a couple of different entities tied in here. Can you kind of give us a little bit of an overview of what these initiatives represent and what you guys are kind of trialing out as these payloads kind of launch?
Yeah, so IoT connectivity is given. We don't need blockchain. We don't need SealCoin for that. Transactional IoT, we need not only blockchain, but also SealCoin. And by the way, SealCoin is the platform, but the TIoT token is the cryptocurrency embedded inside each devices to make sure that we can settle those transactions. So we're a utility and a payment token as organized and regulated by the FINMA, the Swiss regulator. So it's important to understand those components. But what about securing the communications? And the satellite not only enables us to make sure that we control the whole security value chain from the device itself to the communication layer using those satellite communication, but also start to create very interesting use cases in the agricultural environment, but also when you're hiking on top of a mountain. We live in Switzerland, and when you're in between two mountains, you have zero network. So it is handy to have access to those satellite communication to make sure that you can still communicate. And beyond this communication, it's all about transacting. So the POC that we have organized, and it's a set of a series of POC that we are planning in the future, is first of all to make sure that the remote devices can communicate together using a satellite communication. And what we do is that we make sure that the wallet of the remote device can communicate to the wallet of the other remote device, having the transaction settled on chain, on Hedera's chain. The next steps are to make sure that the satellite itself has its own SealCoin agent and can start selling transaction as a service and satellite as a service to anyone willing to purchase a satellite communication. And of course, because the satellite has access to his own Hedera wallet, you can actually start purchasing those services. As I explained with the energy, here you're purchasing another type of service. It's the satellite communication at a level of a communication satellite price. So micropayment, back to the use case of micropayment. And this is exactly what we're trying to achieve here. So with a large constellation of satellite, not only you enable remote devices to be fully connected, but also to remote users living in remote places to have this level of connectivity. And again, talking about devices, not only communicating together, but transacting together, whether it's data, the satellite communication, or whatever. You have the infrastructure tools to make sure that you can recognize yourself securely, prove your identity, prove the ownership of your device, and then transact whatever you want, whether it's data. It can be the level of humidity on a remote place that requires an external provider to switch on the water pipes. Everything is happening autonomously between the devices. You don't need to take care of that. And this is the infrastructure that we're providing. So the satellite is, again, a huge enabler for us. And I think it's providing a lot of excitement around all the networks and the communities, Web3 space, and transactional IoT deep in that space.
I think, one thing that I kind of have come to learn over time is, it seems like a lot of, you mentioned this kind of phased approach for, deployments and proof of concepts and stuff. And really, like, it's interesting because I'm assuming, and, that's kind of like that opens the door for further conversations with other entities whenever you have proof of concepts like that with real world trials that are going live. And then it's almost like you're building, I think, as any business needs to do, and as any technology needs to do, you're almost like building layers of trust to be able to go into the next conversation, develop the next relationship. What is, you kind of alluded to, like, there's been a lot of excitement. Like, has there been excitement with potentially some new partners or some new technology integrators and things like that? Should we, without giving us maybe alpha
No, definitely. But part of our group is publicly listed. We have announced that we are now providing the digital identity of smart meters in Asia. We're talking about 30 million identities of these identities. Again, bear in mind that whenever we sell those microchips or those identities, they are de facto available and interoperable with the SealCoin environment. And by the way, we're already working on those microchips which are post-quantum ready, meaning that we can actually start protecting all of these devices for the quantum computers that are arriving a bit sooner than expected, according to Google at least. And when you think about digital asset and the cryptocurrencies and the holders of cryptocurrency that owns a substantial amount of assets, if quantum computing is starting to become an issue and a threat, the silicon environment is already equipped with all of that. So it brings a lot of interaction and a lot of appetite from manufacturers of devices to understand, okay, we're producing those devices and we have those secure elements, those microchips inside our devices. What does it take to have them compatible with transactional IoT? And when our answer is nothing or not much, it's just making sure that I have access to our SealCoin agent that is downloadable on the device. That's all it takes to get access to the whole Web3 world that we're describing. It's nothing, and it's everything, because again, the IoT landscape becomes transactional, and that's a game changer for them also. Bear in mind that today, when they sell devices, they sell one devices, and then they need to fight with the same client to sell another device. We're talking about recurring devices, recurring businesses. You don't have to sell devices. We're creating with transactional IoT. We're building the device as a service infrastructure. Don't sell devices anymore. Your phone, most of the time, people are not buying their phones anymore. They're just renting them, having a monthly fee, and then changing it over the next year or 2 years. Well, you can do that without the help of the telecommunication providers doing the organizing for the billables. You can do that from the device as a manufacturer, and that changes everything.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things too is like I look at certain things traditionally, or like areas of kind of even whether it be like mandates or whatever. Like ESG is one example where I think blockchain and distributed ledger is a really good fit. And there's kind of all these global mandates for like, you know, carbon neutral or carbon negative that lead us out to 2030 and 2050, where I almost think like you're going to potentially have like distributed ledger not only as like a value add for carbon credits and things like that, but potentially like even like a mandated technology. AI, I think, is another area that I think is really interesting because of all the spoofing that goes on and deep fakes and everything. And it becomes that much more important to have like data authenticity. Whereas like I think about a world 10 or 15 years from now where distributed ledger solutions aren't like going to be a wanted solution. They almost might be like have to be integrated in some way. Do you kind of like, what are your thoughts around that as
Yes.
far as, yeah, okay.
Let's stop talking about blockchain. Let's stop talking about DLT. That's how we cook things. Is it interesting? To some of us, yes. But to most of the people, they don't care how you provide the solution. I want to be able to trust the solution. It's not about providing how you offer the solution. It's, can I trust it? And the only way to know if I can trust it is I've been using it and it works. So let's stop talking about how we do things. We explain that to our partners, but for the users, look, you have a device that can transact autonomously and securely. Full point. You don't need to understand. You don't need to sell blockchain. I'm not here to sell cybersecurity tools. I'm here to sell transactional IoT. And that changes everything. You're talking about ESG and efficiency and sustainability. To me, it all starts with transparency of data, which is given in DLT and blockchain. So let's make sure that we can transparently understand who's consuming what in this world. And then once we have that certainty that this industry is consuming a lot and we should reduce that, maybe we focus all of our efforts into that. But it starts with transparency and DLT and digital integrity. So it's all about data integrity first, I think, for this ESG topic. And then once we have this transparency, this certainty that the issue is there, let's solve it.
I agree. I mean, I don't think that we're moving towards a world where in 10 years people are going to start caring about blockchain verbiage. Like it's just not, it's almost like, like if you and I were to host a really interesting podcast around like TCP/IP and like the way that the internet works, like nobody would care because everybody is just using the internet. I feel like that's the same thing that's going to happen with blockchain, is that everybody's just going to be using it.
Let's speak about what we can do because of this technology. What we can do about with internet. We're not talking about the protocol itself. We're talking about, okay, I can create a website, I can do stuff. Well, same with blockchain. So what we can do, we are taking care of this transactional IoT use case. Others are taking care of other things. Let's speak about what we are actually providing in terms of improvement, in terms of new product, in terms of new capabilities, and let's stop talking about technical wording that, to me, it's interesting, but should not be the interest of the potential users and participants of these networks.
I think we went over a bunch of milestones, but I would love to kind of hear any other kind of milestones that stick out to you. I know you mentioned the smart meters in Asia, certainly the kind of the SpaceX payload. Is there anything else that sticks out to you as far as milestones that you guys have been able to achieve? And yeah.
I think I'd like to go back to this energy use case. Even though it's super exciting to have this energy trading between two devices, if you go down to the latest regulation update on battery value management, what's interesting to me is that it brings out the value of genuine data produced. So electric vehicle, a third of its value is the battery. And now you have new regulation forcing those electric vehicles to get kind of the same black box thing that we have on the planes inside the car to make sure that the mileage is secure and so on and so forth. So if we can tackle these new regulatory requirement, but also that brings a lot of value to the owner of the vehicle, because you can actually prove the value of your car with this digital integrity of the usage of your battery, we're solving something tangible before entering, but we can tackle that in parallel, of course, we would be happy to, into the actual trading of energy. And it's all about, again, how secure data and data integrity on both hands can actually enable much more before we are using on a daily basis. This is our data for monetization. It will come, it's a package, but let's solve real use cases as we're doing it. So you're showing that guide to new European battery regulation. This is exactly what we can achieve here, and that's an easy one.
I think it's interesting because we think about like tokenization of real world assets, and these traditional firms aren't interested in tokenizing real world assets just because blockchain is cool and just because like, oh, it'd be cool to have a digital representation of this asset. At the end of the day, it's about like from that end of things, and from like these RWAs that have been tokenized, it's about liquidity and pathfinding and all the things that they are kind of siloed right now. It's about what you can do with a tokenized real world asset, not just about tokenizing it. And you're talking about the same thing with data essentially. So I think it's really, really interesting.
Yeah, and what you're bringing, I think the most complex things to find is the first use case. If you take the example of Amazon, I think the success of Amazon was to define that their use case was the book. The first use case was the book. Why? Because of many reasons. Jeff Bezos commented on this many times, why he chose the books as the first use case for Amazon, while he had this vision for Amazon being able to sell anything. We're at the same stage where we need to make sure that the first use case that we're going to tackle is going to be the one that can enable all the others to fold.
Makes sense. I think that that's something that we need to see way more of in the blockchain landscape is like, you know, I don't even want to use the word niche because niche isn't the right word. We need kind of like this singular focus for solving actual problems because like, and it's weird because I kind of step back a little bit from that because I think without all of the really cool innovation, we wouldn't be where we're at today. So it's kind of a give and take, but I think we are at a point where, and I would say that the shift has really occurred maybe over the past 12 to 18 months where we're starting to see some actual real world deployments and real world use cases of the technology that don't necessarily have to talk about the technology just because they work and they make things more efficient, which is kind of the key to all this stuff anyways.
I think if we manage to do that, I think it's a no-brainer. And if across an interview where we need to speak about our success, we say, oh, by the way, yes, we use DLT to solve that, that will be a game changer for the whole industry.
I like the fact that you guys like, you know, a lot of the times you go to a site and it's like right posted in front of your face. It's like all of this distributed ledger stuff. And it's just like at the end of the day, empowering Internet of Things with secure, decentralized transactions, you know, and everybody knows what Internet of Things is. I would love if, you know, maybe walk us out here with forward-looking statements. What's coming up in the near future for SealCoin and kind of the partner entities that you guys are involved with, what you're excited about, and yeah.
So we recently launched our marketing campaign. We want to make sure that we need to understand, and most of the outsiders of Web3 project that don't understand this complexity. Of course, I've been talking a lot about the product itself, but the product only exists with its native cryptocurrency. And now we need to build not only the next partners that will use our technology to make sure that they can deploy their IoT devices inside the SealCoin platform to enable those transactional IoT to happen, of course. So that's one big aspect of what we do. But then it's all about creating our marketing campaign, making sure that we have the support from our Web3 community and even broader community to follow what we're doing. For that, this marketing campaign is also marking the point where this summer we're going to issue our token. That's going to be an essential part of everything that we're doing. And with that, together with the issuance, we already have the support and we already communicated on those 50 million supply facility deal that we have for the token. We're actually doubling this number. So now it's a 100 million contract that we have, making sure that we can support the issuance of our token. We are now working also with market makers to make sure that we have the right infrastructure for token to exist and to have everything we need in terms of liquidity to make sure that our vision is represented also in the value of our token. Will be shout out to anyone who will be participating to the next event in south of France for at CC. HBAR will be there. We need to also start bridging the networks of this Web3 community to broader audiences, making sure that we're not exclusively talking about one ecosystem, but a large DLT and a digital integrity framework. Yes, with all of that, it's a lot to come for this end of the year, where we believe that we can again solve real world issues and bring super great technology that excited us and add value. You know, it's all about adding value at the end of the day. It's making sure that we can improve the internet infrastructure that we have to the level that we wish to have it today. We worked a bit on our tokenomics earlier this year, send it back to the Swiss regulator, making sure that they understand what we're doing, because we're now enabling pools to be created. We're enabling people to delegate the security around the platform to backers that will be remunerated for providing this security without having to be involved with the product. So this is really where I'm speaking about those two environments, one product oriented and one token oriented ecosystem that need to live together. And if you're strong on only one of them, it's not enough. And this is a level of complexity that we're facing in Web3 project, but we're happy to. It creates also huge opportunities. We have huge ambitions also. So I think it's a great environment to evolve in, and we have the feeling that we work most of the time in the future. Well, we also have to bring it down to today. So
I think one thing that is nice to see in this space, and not everybody does this, but I know that it's nice to, like, I think this interview is kind of an example of that, is really kind of trialing out the technology before any sort of other aspects get tied in. You mentioned like the token stuff's coming up and everything, and certainly not financial advice from my standpoint, but looking forward to seeing how that goes, and good luck with that on your guys' end. But I think it's interesting because, like, how many times in this space have we seen, like, yeah, hey, here's this thing that we're releasing out into the wild, and then we look forward to V1 of the white paper in 6 months.
You're completely right. I think we are proving that before we announce anything, we're delivering what we're announcing, and that's a game changer. I think in this Web3 environment, too many people are just announcing things and never delivering. We were able to issue our platform and to announce our platform at the last Davos event as a beta version. We're now ready to release it on production. Everything works. We did security audits. We are now our white paper has been approved twice by the regulator. We're in a position where we can now issue our token. We are doing things in the right order, making sure that it's not because we have the product and we can issue the token that we should issue it now. It's all about aligning also the partners for the product and the platform users together. And we are delivering. So we are super happy to be in that position. We have the means also to deploy that. And we want to make sure that we can keep on delivering that with a broader community that want to participate to our ecosystem, that understand what we're building and can benefit from it. Hopefully, we don't know. It's not, as you mentioned, it's not financial advice, but this is what we're working towards too.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to mention, definitely go check out all of the awesome work that SealCoin is doing. You can go to the site at sealcoin.ai. Give them a follow on X. I know that there's a few different accounts, but we're focusing on the SealCoin account right now. And that's at sealcoin_AI. You can check out the white paper. I wanted to give a huge shout out to the Hashgraph Association for helping us to put these together. That's hashgraph.swiss, and then same thing at _hashgraph. And definitely do some deep dives. This is, like, I think one of the more interesting things that has stuck out to people recently, and I'm sure that we're going to see a lot more coming off the back end of this, is the kind of the deployments within the payloads within satellites within these SpaceX launches. Really one of the more fascinating interviews I've been able to do in a while, just because I really do think that sometimes in this space, we kind of zoom into like one tree and we don't zoom out and kind of look at the forest. And I know a lot of crypto is talking about like account abstraction and things like that to make onboarding easier. I think this interview is a good example of, like, okay, well, the technology is just going to be integrated into our daily lives, and we're not going to have to talk about the technology. And it's interesting knowing that that's kind of where we're leading towards. Jonathan, hang out with me for a second as I ramp this down and make sure I get your recording. And don't be a stranger. Let's make sure we do another one of these in the near future.
Thank you, Solomon, for the invitation and for the great conversation we could have. It's indeed special to have this level of conversation with people that understand what we're talking about and have the opportunity to not only speak about what we're building, but why we're building it. And I think that's a game changer. As we launch our marketing campaign, don't hesitate to ask us what the audience wants. I mean, if you want more from us, AMA, we will organize all of that anyway going forward. We're here to make sure that whatever we're building makes sense, and it starts and ends with the end user.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jonathan. I'm going to ramp this down and make sure we get a recording, and appreciate it. And thank you to the audience for watching as well.